up, you guys? Welcome back to the channel. It's your girl JD here, back with another video, and today we're going to be diving into yet another movie. I've been watching quite a lot of films lately in comparison to TV shows, so I felt the need to talk about it. Now, one of the most recent films that I saw was The Substance, and I actually went and watched it because I saw that one of the main stars in the movie, Demi Moore, had won a Golden Globe for her acting in that film. So I was like, The Substance, huh? I'll go check it out. Because a lot of people in the comments of that video, because I watched it over on TikTok, they were saying, yeah, The Substance is actually a really good movie. And I was like, is it? Was it really? Let's go see for ourselves. But it was released back in September of last year. It was directed by Coralie Fargate, I think. Fargate. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but it ended up making about 76.8 million at the box office, and the Rotten Tomatoes score is currently sitting at 89% as of the recording of this video. Now, when I actually go to edit it, it might have changed, but 89% at the time of me recording this video. So we start off with Elizabeth Sparkle. She's an aerobics show teacher getting a star on the Walk of Fame. That's pretty much the scene that we open to. She's more than likely like pretty young at this moment. It looks like it was kind of like 80s-ish, 80s, 90s maybe. And yeah, she is fairly young getting her star on the Walk of Fame, but over time we see that this star is pretty much kind of forgotten about. In her prime, she was getting a lot of attention and praise, but now at the age of 50, she's still doing her show, but it feels pretty dated. So after taping an episode of the show, she decides to go to the men's bathroom because the women's bathroom is currently out of order. So she goes to the men's bathroom, and while she's in the bathroom, she overhears the show's studio head, Harvey, talking on the phone about letting her go, pretty much, saying that Elizabeth is too old and he wants to abandon their contract with her to find someone younger for the show. Elizabeth is understandably crushed, and she ends up in a car accident shortly after that, but thankfully she's unharmed. But she seems to be in a complete daze when the doctors are trying to ask her questions and all that, but she's just like not present mentally. However, the doctor's assistant comes in to run one last test, and he lets it slip that she's the perfect candidate, but doesn't say for what. So it gets kind of mysterious from there. And in her coat pocket, she finds a drive that tells her all about the experiment called The Substance, where your own body can produce a new version of itself. At first, she throws it away, but then she rethinks everything and decides to take the offer. She goes to this like isolated place to pick up this substance, and she injects herself with this liquid, not really knowing what it is, which is so baffling. I'm just like, you watched this video on this drive and just decide, yeah, I think I'm gonna do that. Like, what? You don't know what's in this thing, you know? It's crazy. But anyway, she decides to inject herself without fully knowing the consequences, and now she's on the bathroom floor with another body coming out of her back. Yes, you heard that right. Coming out of her back. Y'all, when I watched this movie, that scene took me out. Or at least almost did. I was literally staring at the screen like, what am I watching? What am I watching? My boyfriend was watching me from afar. He was like, are you good? And then I kind of turned it around and showed him. He was like, what the hell is this? And I'm just like, yeah, I know, right? But I kept watching it. She cleans herself up and she sews her old body back together. Yeah. Literally sews it back together. So now she assumes this new body, this new identity. She refers to herself as Sue now. And the catch is that every 7 days she has to switch back to her older self. But to stabilize herself each day, she has to take spinal fluid out of Elizabeth's back, then inject it into her new body. But after Sue is able to get Elizabeth's old job and Elizabeth is fired and given nothing but a cookbook as a goodbye present, things start to take a turn, because now Elizabeth is feeling more and more like, you know, I just need to be in my Sue body. I need to be Sue. I don't want to be Elizabeth anymore at all. Okay, I'm tired of the switching back and forth. So she becomes kind of consumed by being Sue, and she starts taking longer to switch back to her older body, which makes that body age faster. So the Elizabeth body is now aging a lot faster than it probably would have if she'd followed the instructions and only only done 7 days. However, we see that her decisions are also taking a toll on her Sue body as well. She starts seeing things that aren't really there, seeing little weird stuff appear under her skin, but it's not really there. Eventually, Elizabeth starts to lose it in that cooking scene, throwing food everywhere, and she gets back to being Sue, and it's almost like she now has a split personality and it's two separate people. Then we get to the point where she spends a whole 3 months as Sue because she now found Elizabeth too disgusting to be in. So she just kept taking the spinal fluid every day from the Elizabeth body, and now she just had to bite the bullet and go back to being Elizabeth. So now Elizabeth is looking super haggard because she was being neglected. She chooses to stop the experiment overall but brings Sue back to life, and now she's trying to basically kill herself. Yeah, so Sue, now separate from Elizabeth, sort of, she tries to kill the Elizabeth body. Yeah, so it was like she has herself in 2 bodies simultaneously. Yeah. Anyways, they tussle for a bit, but Sue ultimately wins, and Elizabeth is still a part of her, so she can't really do anything about that. So Sue tries to carry on with business as usual, but now her teeth are falling out, her nails are popping off, and she tries to switch back to Elizabeth, but she's technically dead. She technically killed her. So now we have this monstrosity looking back at her in the mirror, and of course she still tries to make it to the event, but it turns into a disaster real quick, to say the least. And eventually this monstrous body starts falling apart, but she manages to wiggle her way back to her Hollywood star and turns into like this liquid after kind of reliving her glory days for a few moments in her memories. So that's pretty much where the movie ends. It was very interesting. I think the premise was kind of unique as well. It definitely brought up some interesting topics of conversation. Number one being, you know, the pressure of keeping up appearances as a celebrity, but really and truly you're just a regular person that just happens to be famous. It's just really a lot of stress to keep making sure you're in the best physical shape, and you know, your skin is looking great, you're glowing. It's like you're always trying to keep up with some type of beauty standard, basically. It's just this constant chase after youth. It's a never-ending race, it seems. And then point number 2, I think in people's relentless pursuit of success, you realize that there's nobody really around you, and you're now lonely because you didn't put attention on the other parts of your life in terms of the social aspects. So now you look up and it's just like, oh, I'm 50 and there's no one in my apartment besides me. I have no life partner, no kids, if you want them anyway. And you kind of have some regrets sometimes when you look back on your life and you realize like, dang, I have nobody, you know, nobody to share this with. And I think in this movie it depicts that pretty well, that people do have regrets when they choose sometimes their career over everything else. It starts off fun, and then you realize like as the decades go by, like, dang, I wish I didn't do that. Some people are okay with it, but others, they're like, oof. Yeah. And then you also have this notion of becoming pretty much addicted to attention, having all eyes on you, and you just thrive off of it. And without it, you don't know what to do with yourself. And the next thing I noticed is that during your journey of trying to pursue beauty, you kind of become bizarre looking, especially when you go under the knife and do things surgically. Like it gets botched pretty quickly. When you start adding too many things, that kind of is what happens. It's like you just have this constant need for perfection that doesn't exist. Like you're going after this vision that you have of yourself of being perfect, but it just doesn't exist. Like Elizabeth pretty much using this substance, she's basically trying to seek this perfection out that doesn't exist, because eventually this Sue body starts breaking down. And lastly, after everything is said and done and you pass away, when we see that scene of her pretty much disintegrating on top of her Hollywood star, you have to ask yourself, after everything is said and done and you pass away, what is going to remain of you and your memory? How are people going to remember you? And I think a lot of times people get so hung up on how they look and how they're presenting to other people, instead of being focused on like creating these relationships and like making a life for yourself, pretty much connecting back to the point of tension when it comes to you you choosing your career over the rest of the components of your life, you realize that after that you have been choosing a portion of your life over the other that is not really all that rewarding in terms of when you get older. Which kind of connects back to the whole picking your career or success in your career over all the other components in your life. It's like, okay, great, you have the success, but who do you have to share it with? You in this nice high-rise apartment, just you alone. You know? So it's just a lot to think about. I think this was a very well-written movie. I think you guys should definitely go watch it if you haven't. But let me know your thoughts if you have seen it. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.